Hello and welcome to the Spiritual Journey podcast. My name is Nimesh Radia and I'm your host. I always love starting every episode by saying thank you. I feel so blessed with this podcast, all the people it's reaching, all the messages we get on a weekly basis. My objective when I started was to really guide people on their journey to simplify spirituality, and with the messages we get on a weekly basis, I clearly know that's happening. So thank you for listening. Thank you for letting us guide you. If this is the first episode you listen to, welcome. If you've been a regular listener, thank you. This podcast is our way of giving back. We don't script anything. Whatever comes through has come through. Whatever topic we're covering is something that we guided to. So yeah, feeling very, very blessed. I am an Akashic record reader, Akashic trainer, podcast host, podcast creator, as well as a spiritual coach and mentor. I love what I get to do. I get to guide people to truly be their authentic selves, whether that's through mentoring, whether that's through Akashic record reading, podcast, public speaking, whatever that may be. I feel like we're going through such a shift on the planet between divine masculine to divine feminine. We're all going through some kind of shift, and I get to guide people on that shift. And everything's a co-creation. As I guide others, I guide myself. So I'm feeling very, very blessed. And this podcast wouldn't be where it is today without my beautiful co-host, introducing the amazing, the stunning, the healer extraordinaire, and now published author, Stacey Brown. Stacey, you know I've got to do it. I'd love for you to do it yourself.
Welcome, friends. It's good to be back. My name is Stacey. I'm an intuitive. I do readings for people from all around the world. I'm also an Akashic record reader, spiritual coach and mentor, and a recently published author. My book, Journey to Soul Center, Discovering the Gift of Surrender, is available on Amazon and Audible. Really looking forward to another episode today.
Yeah, so am I. I mean, we've covered some really deep topics over the last few weeks. Dark Night of the Soul, spiritual bypass. And it feels like it's been a series of topics, and partly the reason we picked these topics is really because of the shift the planet's going through. I mean, we've been just the last few months, there's been so much planetary activity. We're recording this in between two eclipses, but by the time I release it, we would have just experienced two eclipses. Mercury's still in retrograde, Venus is still in retrograde. So there's so much. And it's been a time where we've talked a lot about it being a fated period, where it's almost like we've been preparing for this period for so many lifetimes. And that's why this week's topic kind of felt like just a continuation. And really this week we're going to talk about the ego versus the soul and kind of how to discern between the two. And I talk a lot about recently where I feel like the conflict within us is at a different level, and there's the soul, the spirit is excited about this period, is worked many lifetimes to be here, knows there's a shift happening and is here for it. He's happy just to ride the wave and trust whatever's coming next. But there's the human in us, the ego in us, that actually is feeling really uncomfortable, is really wanting to know what's next, want to control what's happening next. And this period isn't a time to control. And in many ways, our spirit's rising, and that's making our ego feel even more uncomfortable. So there's like a disconnect, even more of a disconnect for many of us between the two. And this is the turmoil that you're feeling, the change that's coming, the disconnect, because your spirit is soaring, and many times not in your physical body, where your human is feeling uncomfortable, your ego, your human. That's why this topic, and we'll dive into the differences between what your ego is and what your soul is through this episode. But that's why this episode, talking about the split between the two and all the shifts that are happening, I've definitely felt so many shifts inside me. I've been, and I've worked really hard just to ride the wave and trust whatever's next. And I get it. The human really wants to know, and it's hard, right? It's that riding the wave, being present, letting go of the things that you're holding on to. It's more of an intense time, and everyone's going through it differently, right? Some people are really embracing it and enjoying it. Other people are feeling the shift and kind of feeling so much change. Maybe you've been feeling tired. Maybe you got headaches. Just it really is shifting, and many of us we're struggling to hold on, but also many of us are holding on to our old selves and holding on to our expectations. And this really is a period of trusting. And Stacey, I know you've been going through some stuff through this too, and I'm going to ask you next. So, how's this period been for you? When I talk about the human, the ego, and the soul, and kind of trusting what's coming next, how does that feel for your soul, and how does that feel for the ego?
I think it's so interesting because there's such a divide, and yet we get clouded in seeing the difference between the two. And I would say my ego at this point is fighting with my soul and wanting so badly to know what's coming next and how it's going to work out and what things are going to look like. And my soul is a lot quieter in nature. My ego is loud and obnoxious at times, and my soul is gently saying, just trust that everything is working out for your highest good, and everything will work out in exactly the way that it's meant to. I find that it's a lot easier to see the battle between the two when I'm writing. And so it's interesting. I was doing some journaling this morning, and as I was reading through what I was writing, I could see the difference between where my ego was talking and where my soul was talking, and the conflict between the two and what's happening in my world right now. And I think that for a lot of us, the longing to know what's happening next takes over. That ego takes over and tries to rule what's happening. But I believe when we're living from the space of our soul, that's when we're truly living, because we're trusting that the universe has our back and that we're being looked out for.
Powerful stuff. And you talk about it so well in terms of the disconnect. And for me, the ego gets a bad rap, right? Your ego's there. It's just trying to protect you. It doesn't want to change. It wants you to. And the reason it doesn't want you to change is if you change too much, then maybe you'll get hurt. Maybe you'll fall. Maybe you'll, ego for me stands for earth guide only. It's here as part of your human. But you can't just choose parts of you to love, right? So your ego's there for a reason. Sometimes you've got to talk to your ego, let your ego know that change is okay. You got to fighting your ego. Everyone talks about the death of the ego and all that. It's part of who you are. It is trying to keep you safe, but it's talking to your ego and understand why your ego is doing what it's doing. Stacey talked about it, right? A lot of the time when we get messages, when we get an intuitive hit, our soul, our spirit doesn't need to shout. It's not heavy. So normally the messages, when you ask a message, your intuition, your guides, normally it's the first response, but it's normally, I wouldn't say it's quiet, but it's not loud. It's just there, it's present. And what happens is your ego comes across, and your ego is very emotional, very loud, and it kind of takes over. And the more that you start to trust your intuition, the quieter your ego becomes. But it's, again, your ego is not a bad thing. It's trying to keep you safe. But, really, it's time to ask yourself, are you letting your ego run the show? And again, Stacey talked about it. What does allowing the ego run the show mean? Where are you making decisions from? Are you making fear-based decisions? Are you making decisions from a place of worried that, if you can make the wrong decision, everything's going to fall apart? Are you making decisions from I think or I feel? For me, making a soul-led, heart-led decision is changing my language from I feel, instead of how do I think about this, is how do I feel? The other signs are also seeking external validation. I mean, how often when we have a question, is the first thing we do is we go and ask somebody else, or we Google it, or we ask ChatGPT. What if actually the first thing we did is sit in silence and trusted whatever's happening inside? Asking ourselves first. I'm not saying don't go and check externally, but why don't we listen to our own intuition, our own messages first? The other signs are resisting change. Are you clinging onto your old self? Are you always arguing? Are you always arguing to be right? Are you just almost constantly arguing with yourself? Actually, a good episode to listen to about this whole thing is the episode that we had about spiritual bypassing, because it's very related to this conversation. It's different, but it's related. Because it's like the spiritual bypass is sometimes using spirituality as an identity. Oh my God, I'm doing all this stuff and, I'm doing it. And it's like, but are you doing the work? Are you doing the work? Are you really listening to your messages? Or sometimes we just do a lot of spiritual activity, meditations and all that sort of stuff, but it's a way of ticking a box. I guess the summary of this part of it is to understand your egos. One is to understand it's helping you, it's wanting to keep you safe. But two, it's also about you letting go and trusting what's next and changing your question and switching from I think to I feel. So Stacey, I know you're going through a lot of change and, you're currently in the UK, you're going back to the US soon. How are you managing the kind of the shift between your ego and spirit? I know you mentioned journaling. What else would you recommend, and any insights you want to share about what you're going through?
It's not been easy at all. I have felt very at home here the last 3 months, very peaceful. The countryside of the UK is just beautiful. I'm in a loving, committed relationship and just feeling very at home here. And I miss my kids. I want to see my kids and I want to have time with them and with my friends and that kind of thing. But the idea of going back makes me feel like physically sick in the unknown. That's my ego talking, right? My ego is like desperate to know what's going to happen next. And my soul, when I'm in the present moment and I'm staying present and I'm staying focused, my soul is like, you've been looked out for your entire life. And this is just one more step in you trusting that you're going to be looked out for again. So some things that I do to manage this time, first of all, is writing, which I talked about. And I've been doing that daily. And that's been really helping me to process what I'm feeling. I believe that a lot of us are gifted channel writers. And by writing, we can process a lot of the stuff that we might not otherwise be able to process. So that's one way of doing things. Another thing I do is I exercise, but I combine my exercise with my meditation. So I'm a big fan of the treadmill, and I know people are probably listening to this going, oh my gosh, how does she do it? But I go to a very meditative space with the rhythm of the treadmill, like that kind of rhythmic movement where I can just zone out, is really powerful for me and gives me a space to just kind of think and be and allow myself to sometimes to think deeper and sometimes to let go and not think at all. And it depends on which space I'm in, where I am in that. But I have found that that's been such a good release for me. And then I spent a significant amount of time in nature today, like hours out in the garden and just being. And that's a powerful place for me as well, because it's forcing me to be in this present moment instead of worrying about what's coming next. And I think that's the key for a lot of us, is finding ways to be in the present moment versus anticipating what's coming next. And friends, in this season, I have no idea what's coming next. I'm headed back to the States without a plan for when I'm going to return here, when I'm going to apply for a visa, what all of this is going to look like. I mean, it is a very uncomfortable place to be. And if I allow my ego to take over, I will be in a very unhealthy space. And unhealthy for me looks like not exercising, not being in the present moment, possibly self-medicating in whatever way, whether it's with food or alcohol or whatever the case may be, but self-medicating and kind of numbing out the feelings that I'm having. And me being connected to my soul looks like me taking time to be with my thoughts and feelings, allow myself to be present, and have some healthy habits in order to be able to cope. And I think a lot of us are in this season. Like, I don't think a lot of us are making a major life decision about where we're going to live and move and all of that necessarily. But I still think there's this battle between wanting to know and control the outcome of everything that's happening with us and being in a deep space of surrender and trusting that the universe has our back. And I think that's the space that I kind of keep going back and forth between. And I have to reset myself repeatedly. I have to reset that energy that I have on a very regular basis and be consistent about it. And sometimes it's moment by moment, sometimes it's hour by hour, but I have to keep reminding myself that as much as I want to be in control, I'm not actually in control. And that whatever is meant for me is going to find me. And I can either resist it and fight it and make myself really uncomfortable, or I can lean into it. And I'm choosing right now to lean into it. And it is not easy. It is not an easy thing. I really want our listeners to know, like, if you're struggling with this, I see you. I know that this is not an easy thing. And we talk so often on this podcast about self-care, but I really feel like in order to really listen to your soul, you've got to have a consistent way of showing up for yourself. And it can be little things like how you're sleeping and how you're eating and how you're showing up day to day. And it can be big things like who you're surrounding yourself with, what you're doing in your day, how you're managing your stress, all of those things. And I think they're all a factor in how I'm managing right now. I think it's everything from my sleep patterns, my eating patterns, etc., to what I'm doing in a day and how I'm showing up. And it is very easy to get distracted by my ego and to go to this place of, oh my gosh, I have to know what's going to happen and how is this going to work out and what am I going to do and am I going to be okay? And, the spinning of the wheels. But there's a whole other part of me that just knows that I'm being led on a journey exactly where I'm meant to be. And it's about trust and surrender right now.
So much wisdom in everything you said, Stacey. It's really interesting. One of the things that resonates is obviously self-care, and I'll talk about that in a second, but also I'm very conscious that sometimes on this podcast we make things sound easy. And, I always love to remind people, look, we're a soul having human experience. Who decides what's easy and what's hard? And, you are going through a massive shift, and I feel like we all are. And you said it so eloquently that, that shift may not look as much of a shift outwardly as it is for you. I mean, deciding where you want to live and kind of life-changing decisions. But I do feel like we're all at a phase where we do have choices to make, and we've all kind of gone through a shift, a rebirth. And I talk a lot about this podcast about the next 18 months, 2 years with the planet. It's going to be a lot of shifts, and it's going to be easy to let the external noise consume us. But it really is a time to do what so many of the things you've said is to be silent and listen to your soul, and recognize the ego between the soul. Is the ego is always emotional, always. The soul is always light. It always doesn't have a lot of emotion. And the more you listen to your heart and your soul, the stronger the message from your guides get. But yes, self-care, all of that is so important right now. Something meditative, some time in nature, some kind of physical activity, some time with yourself. And, the question, how do you feel about spending time with you? Because if you struggle with spending time with yourself and you always need to be around company, that's normally, again, a sign that there's something happening inside you that's ready to heal, but somehow you're running away from it. So this is just, I'll always say things like everything you need is inside you, all your answers, all your joy, all your love. And it's just that, for me, kind of asking that question, is my ego running the show or am I running the show? Is really the answers are within you. How are you making decisions? Are you, courageous for me is being fearful, but taking a decision anyway and doing it anyway, right? But are you making decisions from a fear-based perspective? Are you making decisions from a history, what you've been through? Or are you truly sitting with yourself, meditating? Because they say praying is asking for what you want, and meditating is listening. And doing the things that work for you. Stace talked about journaling. Journaling doesn't always work for me as much as it does for Stace. I love journaling. I love releasing that way. But I also love meditating, right? I love spending time in spiritual realms and just drifting there, and kind of, it's my way of also detoxing, right? And it's just having a strong self-care routine is really a strong base in terms of making a decision from a heart base rather than a fear based. Because when you have a strong self-care routine, you meditate, spend time in nature, some sort of physical activity, what you're doing is you're creating a base for yourself. And it gives you that calmness, and from that calmness, you can make different decisions. The other signs of his ego running the show is, are you always looking for external validation? Are you kind of like, you're getting a message from your instinct and you're like, well, I'm not sure. And, you're kind of looking for others to validate, or you Google or whatever. That's also another sign. What if you could sit with your energy today and really ask your intuition, what can I do today to raise my intuition, raise my spirit, shine my light? What if the first answer you got, which wasn't heavy from your ego, what if you did that? Because when you start having a strong self-care routine, when you start trusting your intuition, what you're doing is you're sending a signal to yourself, your psyche, that you are important. Another example is, do you always need to be right? Are you okay having a conversation and disagreeing with somebody and agreeing to disagree and doing it with love? Or do you have a need in with you to always be right? Where does that need come from? And we talked about this earlier. Are you using spirituality as an identity? Are you doing things? Oh, look at me, I'm meditating. Oh, look at me, I'm going through these retreats. I know I went through a period when I went through my dark night of the soul, if that's what you want to call it. I went through a period of looking for things to fix me. Send me a course. Give me meditation. And I'll be fixed. What if you don't need to be fixed? What if everything's happening to you right now? Stace talked about it. He's guiding you, helping you, expanding you in some kind of way. Because everything we've been through from a painful experience in many ways has expanded us. So what if you could change your question to whatever's happening in your world. How is it serving me? How is it expanding my soul? Because the first stage in any shift spiritually is always awareness. And how do you become aware? You change your question. And I guess it's a good reminder just to remind yourself that every part of you is helping you. Whatever's happening is a result of something, and it's serving you in some kind of way. So, the first stage in is increasing your awareness and changing your question, sitting with yourself and really being honest with yourself, looking in the mirror and having the honest conversation, asking, am I making decisions from the heart or is it from the head? Am I always needing to be right? Where does that come from? Am I being triggered in some kind of way? How is that serving me? Changing your question and changing it to be more inquisitive increases your awareness. And if you become aware and you observe, that's always the first sign of spiritual shifting. But here's the thing with awareness, and I joke about it with Stacey quite often, is, once you become aware, you open Pandora's box. You kind of you realize that some of the things you're doing are not serving you. But once you open that box, you can't close it. And I sometimes I've gone and I wonder if I wasn't so aware, what would that feel like? And there's a part of me that wonders. And that's normally when I'm kind of maybe going through something. But actually, I wouldn't change it. Awareness has led to the next stage after awareness is always acceptance. Because you become aware and you think, oh my God, I've been doing this for so long, and whatever, and you start to judge yourself. Accepting yourself and falling in love with this version of yourself right now is really important. And trusting and letting go. And, Stacey talked about her journey, and she's, I love how the mentors in this world somehow have to experience things at a deeper level. And Stacey, if you're a regular listener to this podcast, you'll know that actually ever since I've known Stacey, she's been going through rebirth after rebirth, but through all those rebirths, she's become this amazing healer. And kind of seeing somebody else's journey, like seeing Stacey's journey through my eyes, actually also helps me to understand how much I've grown, because you can't always see it. And that's also a good question to ask. You just sit with yourself and take stock of your journey and realize how much you've grown and how much you've been through. And, maybe that helps also with your ego. So if your ego can see how much you've shifted, how much you've changed, and how much that change has helped you to grow. Because how often do we remember a painful experience and we remember the pain, but we don't remember the growth? So again, that's a great place to start. Go back. I don't always recommend going back, but what's like a painful experience you went through, and what did you learn from it? How did it help you grow? And Stacey, I know you've got a few, but how has, embracing change helped you in your past?
Wow. I feel like
I love putting you on the spot, right? There's a for those that don't know, ever since I've met Stacey, I've kind of always asked her these questions. The first time we met, we were in Clubhouse, and which is a social audio app, and I always used to ask her these questions and make her cry, and I felt really bad about it. But she always used to ask me a question. I want you to ask me a question. So, Stacey, this is a role that you asked me to play for you as your expander and to ask you these questions. So yeah,
how has
how has your painful experiences expanded you? Give us an example of something you've been through that was a massive change, but actually in the end, you realize it was for your benefit.
Well, I think that through everything that happened with my son, my whole world changed. For those who don't know, we're coming up on the 6-year anniversary of my son attempting to take his own life. And through that experience, I gave up a really successful career in the beauty industry to pursue my career and my calling as a healer. And it was one of the darkest seasons of my life, but has brought me so much richness and experiences that I never would have even fathomed having 6 years ago. I mean, I lived in a small rural town in Maryland in the US and had very minimal travel experience, hadn't really been to many places in the world. And since then, I've been back and forth to the UK. I've been to Mexico. I've been to all different kinds of places and experiencing different things. And I would say that through that experience, I really had to let go in order to allow the universe to show off for me. I had to really let go of my comfort zone and the predictable and the familiar for whatever was going to be. And it has been painful. I mean, I, gave up a marriage and I gave up a home. And, you know, in a way, I'm kind of homeless right now. um, I am kind of shocked at how much I've given up, like physically in the world, to be this version of me. And yet it's also been extremely liberating to do things very differently than what the average person does, and to not have like the responsibility of being a homeowner, and to be traveling and to meet my partner and do the work that you and I do. So much has changed, and it's been out of a lot of pain that I've had these experiences. And at times it's been so scary. I mean, it has been really, really scary at times. And then there are other times where it has been so much joy and I have felt so much alignment and purpose. And I get to help people in a deeper way than I ever would have thought that I'd be able to. And it's crazy to think that through the surrender has come these blessings that I would never have envisioned for myself. I mean, I would never, if somebody had said to me 6 years ago that I would be embarking on, multiple journeys to the UK, that I would meet my significant other here, that I would be living here for 3 months, that I would be going through any of the stuff that I'm going through right now, I would never have believed it. I mean, there's no way that it would have even crossed my mind. But I believe when we let go, we allow God to show off. And I'm realizing, even as I'm talking about this, that I've got to let him show off again. I've got to be in a space where I'm okay with the unknown, because I know that I'm supported. And when I've let go in the past, really beautiful things have happened. And this is another time where I need to let go.
So powerful. And I guess that's a great question to ask our listeners is, are you allowing, whether you call it God, whether you call it your guides, source, whatever works for you, by you allowing them to show off for you. I always remember the phrase, asking. I always love to ask my guys to show up and show off. Are you asking and allowing your guys to show off for you? Powerful, powerful question. Thank you for that, Stace. There's something in my throat, so maybe that's a sign too that if somebody's listening, maybe it's time to speak your truth. The other part of this conversation that reminisces is the feeling that everything's happening really quickly. And that's also what makes the ego feel uncomfortable is the speed of change, and change being the only constant. But are things really happening really quickly? I mean, I feel like we've been preparing for this shift for many lifetimes, but I also feel like in this human life, a lot of the shift started in as lockdown in 2020, right? There's I always talk about it as a way of, I know there's a lot of people, a lot of pain, a lot of people left this realm. But for many of us, we all of a sudden we had lots of time. Whereas before, we'd always say we don't have a lot of time. We don't have time to meditate. We don't. But what the universe, what Mother Nature did was effectively send us all to the naughty corner and say, okay, you want time? I'll give you time. But I feel like that started a sequence of events that is kind of coming full circle in this present energy. So I'd say to your ego that things may feel like they're shifting quickly, but it's been a series of things that have happened and series of releasing karma. And maybe, I mean, for me personally, a lot of relationships have shifted, a lot of friends. You could say I've lost a lot of friends, but has the universe been clearing my path for whatever's coming next? Maybe. I'm open to it. March 2020, my friend, my guide, my mentor, who a lot of people heard me talk about, Cedric Jeffrey, left this realm, right? It was the anniversary of her leaving this realm a week or so ago. But even her leaving, and now she's one of my spiritual guides, it helped me to realize I was playing safe. There's me, and I think, spiritual bypass was probably a thing for me then. I was doing all these events with her and I was playing safe, and, it's almost like I was waiting for her recognition and what I should do next. And obviously I miss her humanly, but this podcast was started after she left this realm, being guided by, and a realization that I've been playing it safe. So I guess what I'm saying to your ego, for all our listeners, is the shifts that are happening for you. The shifts that are happening are not fast. We've been preparing for this. Your spirit, your soul is ready. And when I'm saying that to you, Stacey, I'm saying that to our listener. Actually, I'm saying it to myself. That we're ready for this shift. I'm talking to my ego. We're ready for this shift. We work for this shift. What if you can trust and allow the universe to show off? And what does that look like? That looks like letting go of your expectations. Because sometimes we ask our guides, but we have these expectations of how these things are going to look like, how the message is going to come through. You ask a question and all of a sudden you don't get an answer straight away and you get frustrated. But what if the answer comes in your dreams? What if the answer comes in the conversation with a friend, listening to the radio, listening to a podcast? Who knows? Your guides will talk to you in so many different ways, and sometimes there are expectations. And Stacey talked about it. This really is a time of moving from fear and control to trust and surrender. Even the act of just saying, I surrender. I surrender, God. I surrender, Source. I surrender my guides. I let go of my expectations and I trust you. That's a powerful thing to do. Just letting go. We put so many labels on. I mean, we dark night of the soul, awakening, whatever you want to call it. And just sometimes we look for tick the box. I'm going through all these things. Oh, that must be the dark night of the soul. You're looking for external approval. What if you can accept that you're going through a shift, you're going through a rebirth, and you need to get to know this new version of you? And what if you make a decision to trust your intuition? And start small. Maybe you just get up every morning and say, okay, what's your message for me? And just trust whatever comes through. And if you're not hearing things, you're not seeing things, that's okay, because when you start to feel and you trust your intuition, that's when your connection with your guides builds. And sure, over time, maybe you hear things and maybe you see things, or maybe you don't. Does it really matter? What if you can truly trust what's happening inside you? So, Stacey, you're going back to the US next week, and I'm sure there's awareness and there's things happening inside you. What are you going to do on the journey home to truly embrace and trust whatever's coming next for you?
Well, it's been a seesaw for me. I have moments where I'm really peaceful and really trusting and living from that soul space. And then I have other times where I'm like, oh shit, what am I going to do? And, I'm having a human experience. I feel like I'm absolutely keeping it real. I will be going through that same seesaw. I think there will be moments where I am freaking out and my ego takes over. And then I've got to reset and get back to my soul and trust that I'm being looked out for and that whatever is for my highest good is happening. And what am I going to do? I am going to be brave and get on the plane. I am going to get off the plane and see my best friend because she's picking me up from the airport. I am going to process whatever emotions I'm feeling in the car ride back to the house with her. I'm going to embrace time with my children because I haven't seen them in a couple of months. And I know that will put me in a good space. I'm going to do all I can to stay present. I'm going to do all I can to be in that soul space. And when I have those moments where my ego takes over, I'm going to let myself feel it. I'm not going to ignore it because it's going to come up either way, right? Like I can either try to avoid it and then get hit in the face with it, or I can pace myself through it. And I don't know, Nims. I mean, it's scary, it's a lot of change in a short amount of time and a lot of unknown. But I think the main thing is embracing where I am instead of thinking about where I think I should be, because where I should be isn't necessarily where I am. And I need to embrace exactly where I'm being placed. And for whatever reason, I need to go back to the States. And I think part of that is my kids, right? But I think part of that is me too. And so I'm just going to take it a day at a time, one day at a time, one moment at a time, and allow myself to experience whatever it is that I'm meant to there.
I love it. Powerful, powerful stuff. And I knew when I asked you that question, it'd be vulnerable for you. And so thank you for being so open. I'm sure I'm going to get a few calls along the way too. But, actually I met you at the weekend. It was nice to meet you in person, give you a hug. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening, sending you the biggest hug, lots of love and light. And, if I was to summarize this episode, surrender would be a good word to pick. It's an interesting time. There's a lot of shifts happening for a lot of people. And, Stacey, I feel like part of your role as a mentor, as a guide, is to go through some of these things so you can guide others. I feel like, the three things that the reason that we're going through so much in this lifetime, is really multifaceted. Part of it is because, we've got to release so much karma, ancestral, personal. Second thing is that, our soul's here to expand. Our soul chose to be here. And third is, what if everything we're going through, and we're going through such things at such a deep level, is for our training for whatever's coming next? Maybe we're meant to guide people. And that's the other thing with kind of talking to your ego, is understanding that everything you're going through is helping you, is serving you in some kind of way. And when you're going through it and you're really in it, it's hard. I mean, Stacey was so powerful there, so vulnerable, because it would be easy. And I'm sure there's times where she could just almost want to give up, right? But there's a fire in her, which is keep fighting. I know I'm going through this for a reason. I don't know what it is, but I know I'm going through it. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. There's such a shift. But what if we could trust our journey? What if we could truly let go? And actually, if you're feeling your ego, feel it. As Stacey said so vulnerably, it's like, if you're going through something, if you all of a sudden use lots of affirmations and whatever that looks like, I guess I'd ask you, are you spiritually bypassing? Because if you're going through something, you're a soul having a human experience. So experience whatever you're going through, but don't sit there. And this is what, your soul knows so much. Are you trusting your soul's wisdom? Are you listening? Are you sitting down in meditation? There's so much power in stillness and surrendering, and just if you're struggling to spend time with yourself, then that's a sign again that you got to get to know yourself. Listen to the voice in your head. What are you saying to yourself? Are you in victim mode, or can you change your question and really ask, what am I learning from this period? What is it here to teach me? Because sometimes the quicker you integrate the lesson, the quicker you can move on. But remembering that you're a soul having a human experience at this moment, whatever you're experiencing is what you're meant to, and truly trusting that whatever's for you will find you. And remember that you need your ego. This episode is not about killing your ego. It's not about pushing your ego. It's about embracing your ego. Knowing that your ego is trying to keep you safe. Talking to your ego and letting your ego know that you don't need to be protected. Talking to your soul and now having a conversation. Why did we pick this journey? What are my lessons here? Why do I pick these people in my life? How are they here expanding me? But also challenging yourself. Other people in your life, is your soul contract done? Is it time for you to let go to some of these people to create space for new? This is a beautiful time if you embrace it, but it's a scary time too. I can relate so much to what Stacey says. I can feel a shift in me. I know my life is changing in ways I can't control. But I'm so ready for it. I'm ready for it. Whatever it is, and maybe this can help somebody. My conversation with my guides, my soul, is I'm here for something different. Just, I surrender. Take me to wherever I need to go. I'll show up. I'll keep showing up. And that's the deal. I'm just going to keep showing up. Whatever it means, it means. And always remember, the ego is not an enemy. It's a tool. The key is to sit with your ego and go inside and listen. When you listen to your ego, when you listen to your soul, what you're doing is you're giving your soul permission to lead. And that's really, for me, if I was to summarize the conversation, it really is about that. It's surrendering and saying to my soul, saying to my spirit, you take the lead. And I let go. So Stacey, as we close this episode out, I'm going to ask you for some journal prompts. But also, when I say to you, letting go and asking your soul to lead, how does that sound to you?
I think it sounds amazing, because it is challenging, but when we do it, it puts us in such a beautiful space. And so I strongly encourage our listeners to take some time and do some writing and some introspection and ask yourself, are you leading with your ego or are you leading with your soul? And how do you differentiate between the two? And allow yourself some space to just write about it and see what comes up. Allow yourself to think about and dig deep in your thinking about where you are. Are you in a space where you are trusting in the process? or are you in a space of trying to control the outcome?
I love it. I love it. And sometimes I wonder about us in this podcast. We don't always talk a lot about what we do, but guiding people through this is exactly what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So if you feel like something we've said resonates, if you feel like we can guide you in some way, we have a beautiful spiritual mentorship program. You can book a free discovery call, book it with both of us. The link is in our website. You can book it individually, whatever resonates. Book an Akashic record reading. We do a beautiful joint Akashic record reading, which is you get divine masculine, divine feminine, and we kind of, our souls are aligned. So you get a message from two different perspectives, two different healers, but then it's always aligned. And it's such a, I believe, a unique, never seen anyone else do it. So it's such a unique, beautiful experience. And we love what we get to do. And it's like this podcast is our way of giving back, which is why we don't have adverts, which is why we don't do a lot of hard selling, because actually anyone that's meant to work with us, I really feel it's a soul contract and they'll find us. But of course, we should talk more about what we do too. So I'm just, something we said resonates, please do reach out. Follow us on social media. Links are always in the show notes. We post there whatever we're feeling, and just, I know Stacey's the same thing. We're going to keep showing up. We're going to keep showing up. Whatever we're going through, whatever's happening in our world, we're going to keep showing up. And I'm sending everyone so much love and light out, and just keep shining your light, keep showing up, keep shining your light, keep showing up, and be the example for others. You're a beautiful soul that's meant to be here. Sending so much love and light out to everybody, truly embracing this period. We've just been through spring equinox. Spring is a beautiful time. It's a beautiful time to embrace the new year. For me, spring equinox is the new year. It's more than new year than January. So why don't you embrace the new energy? Stacey, thank you as always for being so vulnerable, for sharing from the heart. I love you and wishing you the best of luck, and sending you so much love and light. I'm going to hand over to you to close us out.
Thanks again for another great episode. We love the work that we do, and we are here to serve and pour into you. So if something resonates, please reach out and share. Thanks again for another great episode. Bye for now.
Bye for now. Love and light.